this part of the while tutorials, we're going to see how we can loop through an array using a while loop. So let's do that together. We can define a new array, const students. And so I'm going to create a new array consisting some names of the class, for example, Matt and Harry. Thomas, Sarah, James, and it could be some other names, for example, Emily and Alice. So that's it for now. Just imagine that it's just 7 students inside of the class, and so let's have the while loop. So before that, I should define I, and also I'm going to create text and set it empty. So the text here is going to actually bring any one of the elements of this array consisting the names of the students inside of the text. So we're going to place it inside of our HTML elements. So here I want to create a new p tag. So here I've written the names tag here. Also I'm going to have another kind of looping through the array using the for loop. So I've created 2 tags for each one of them. And here inside of a while loop, as you can see, I've defined text. And so let's write the while loop, while, and then here the while loop for looping through the array is just the same as the for loop. So for the for loop we had, so let's first write the for loop, how it was. For, actually with the small letter, for, and we had 3 statements, and the second one is just the one we're going to write for the while loop. But the while loop doesn't contain these semicolons, because here in the for loop we want to omit the first and the third statement and only look for the second statement, which is the equivalent of saying that it's the condition. So in the for loop we started from an iteration up to somewhere that we want to continue. So for example, I equals to 0 up to, for example, I equals to 10. And here we want to do exactly the same, but we want to omit from where up to where. So here I'm going to say I smaller than, so what is the length of the array? It's 7, so I'm going to say less than 7. And then I'm not going to write anything else because we already know that we're going to increment I. So here, let's increment I plus, and also let us write text plus equal, and then we want to have what we want to write. So first of all, I'm going to write students and the ith student, and then we want to add the br tag in order to go to the next line. So here we go, and then we're going to write document dot get elements by ID, and then we use the ID of the elements, which was names dot inner HTML equals to text, So let's save this, and for now let's check if this part of code has any problem. So this code should show us each of the names inside of the elements of the HTML of our code. So now we're going to there, and here we have while.html. Let's open it up, and as you can see, we've written, let's see the class names, and we have Matt, Harry, Thomas, Sarah, James, Emily, and Alice as the result of the names that we've written in the array. Elements are printed on the browser. So now let's get into here, and let us do this with the while loop. So again, I equals to 0. We reset the I variable, and then we have text number 2, and this one is going to be equal to br tag. It's the same as an empty string, but with the difference that we are going to go to the next line, so there is a space between the first list and the second list. So here we're going to use the while loop. It's going to be exactly the copy paste of this for loop, except the fact that we're using while here, and we don't have semicolons. We don't have semicolons inside of this condition, because it only has one statement here, and there we go. So now we can write document dot gets elements by ID, and then we have the ID names 2 dot inner HTML equals to text number 2. So let's save this, and here I want to refresh the page. We don't seem to have that, so let's check what's the problem here. So we have I equals to 0, text number 2 equals to br, and then we have the very same statement right here inside of the while loop. So probably it's because of the tag here. Names number 2 is the ID, and so let's check back on the JavaScript. So right here, we're using text number 2 names 2, and br tag is written here at the beginning. So we go to the next line, and then we're going to print out what we want here. So now I've got what the problem is here. Text should be text 2, and so let's save the code, and here I should refresh the page. And as you can see, we have the same list printed out as the result of the while loop. So now, as you can remember, we had continue and break. If you have followed along with the Python tutorials, we had continue and we had break inside of our loops, but that belongs to the for loop, not the while loop. In order to do that, we're going to add an if statement for the for loop. So imagine that you want to skip some of the names here. For that case, you use continue. So for example, you want to skip Thomas. So here I write if I equals to, so what is the position of Thomas? It's the element number 0, 1, 2, so element number 2, and then we have the block. So let's see what should happen here. So continue, and by the way, don't forget that you shouldn't write I afterwards if, because if you do that, then it's going to skip the rest of the code. Also, if you want to skip the name of that element that belongs to I, which is equals to 2. So for example, we want to skip Thomas. I here equals to 2, and then you check whether I is equal to 2, and then you will continue, meaning that you will skip this part and you will not print out Thomas. So if you want to skip Thomas, don't forget that I++ shouldn't be skipped, because if you skip that, you will forever be inside of the loop and the browser keeps running and running and running, and it will crash, and all your computer will crash, and it will keep thinking and thinking, whether it's Google Chrome or any other browser. So don't do that kind of a mistake any time, because I've done that, and that's a big dilemma. So just don't do that and be careful about this part. So let's save the code and let's see if Thomas here is going to be skipped. So I've saved the code and I'm going to refresh the page, and inside of the first one, the first list, you cannot find Thomas. So the third one is James, but here the third one is Thomas, right? And by the way, something looks strange here. We've skipped Thomas and we don't have Matt here, right? Pretty much strange. So why is it that way? We gotta see here, why is it that way? So that's because I++ is written at the beginning. And by the way, if you notice something here, we have undefined, something that is undefined. And the reason is we start from I equals to 0, I equals to 1, and so here it's better to write -1, because we're going to skip Thomas. And by the way, we don't want I to be inside of the if, actually after the if, because we don't want to skip this part. So we start from I equals to -1, -1. So save the code and refresh the page, and this should fix everything. So as you can see, we start with Matt, Harry, Sarah, James, Ellie, Alice. And by the way, something else to add here, I smaller than 7, than 6. Why? Because it will increment it, and before incrementing it, it will check. So if I is less than 6, it shouldn't go on and make it 7, so that we have the 7th element or 8th element, the element position number 7, because we don't have it, and as a result here you can see that it's undefined, right? So be very careful about these details, and if you haven't understand it, you can keep repeating through the loop and understand what I'm saying. I'm going to do that for you once. It starts from -1 and then it will become 0 when it becomes I++. Then it will print the text, because it's not going to skip this one. But when it gets to, for example, 5, it will check here and it will enter the for loop. I becomes 6, and the 6th element or the 7th element, the position number 6 or the 7th element is Alice. Okay, so here we want to print Alice, but if here it becomes 6, it will get out of the loop. But here, if our condition was I less than 7, it would become 6, and enter here I would become 7, and we don't have any element with the position number 7. So as a result, we would have had the undefined. Okay, I hope you've understand it, and here we've got the result we wanted. As you can see, if I refresh the page, we have 1, 2, 3, we have 6 names here, but here we have 7 names with a while loop. And the reason is we wanted to skip Thomas, and as a result, as you can see, we don't have Thomas with the continue inside of our if statement in the for loop. But imagine that from Thomas, or from, for example, from Sarah, we don't want to have the classmates. So for that kind of condition, we use break. And when you use break, we will have Matthew, or Matt, Harry, and Thomas, and then we won't have Sarah, James, Emily, and Alice. And it will break from here, break out of the loop. So let's save the code and get into Google Chrome and then refresh the page. As you can see, we only have Matthew, Harry, and Thomas. So there we go. We've learned about continue and break inside of a for loop, and also learned how to work with while loop and how to print out different items of an array inside of the HTML elements of the browser. And we've also learned about the while loops.